истинный в огне. Кто читает свои сны, поклоняюсь темноте.
When I was a kid, my grandfather used to tell me these stories. My mother never really approved, but it was something that he and I shared. He was really more of a father than a grandfather to me, more than anything. Growing up, I haven't really known my actual father, so I was thankful to have someone like him in my life, a strong figure that I could look up to. He seemed to know everything, absolutely everything. I would look forward to hearing him talking about his childhood, history, mythology, life, but most of all, I would look forward to his horror stories. He had a way of telling me stories that would turn my blood cold. His deep, weathered voice rattled my bones with every word he uttered. Slow and guttural, his delivery of the stories may have been even scarier than the stories themselves. He could have read a blueberry muffin recipe that would make children look under their beds and in their closets before bedtime and think twice about switching off that light. But it wasn't just the way he told the stories. The stories themselves terrified me as well. I would beg my grandfather to tell me his stories. He would often hesitate and tell me that it wasn't a good night for stories like that, which I found odd since I thought that every night was a good night for them. But on a clear night with the full moon, or a night with thunder crashing overhead and the lights in the house flickering on and off, he would tell me the most frightening of tales. When he told me these stories, I wouldn't dare move a muscle or breathe too loudly. I would often be cocooned in a blanket either in my bedroom or in the living room, listening intently, focusing on every word. Every word that came out was more terrifying than the previous. I braced myself in case of the possibility that the story might be one where he would grab my arm and scream at the end. Those were always my favorite. But one story in particular stood out to me more than the others. The story of the Knock Knock Man. My grandfather would tell me that a long time ago, long before he was born, this man would knock on people's doors in the village. If anyone in the village answered the door, they would then belong to him. That was his call, a knock at your door, and if you answered his call, you were his. You entered into a contract. There would be no escaping. My grandfather would go on to tell me when he was a kid back in the 30s, one of the kids from his neighborhood, a kid named Billy Gordon, he answered the call of the Knock Knock Man. Billy had come home one day after school and began to settle himself in when he heard a knock at his door. He answered it like he would any other day, but this day it was different. This day no one was there. He looked around, but after a moment of not seeing anything, he went back inside and closed the door. The knocking started back up again as soon as he walked away. He answered it once more, and again no one was there, but this time something was left behind. An old, wrinkled piece of paper with the word "Hi" written in black ink. Billy came to school one day soon after that, visibly shaken, on the verge of tears, and told my grandfather and all of the rest of the class what had happened, and what was still going on. The knocks at the door, the strange things that had been happening to him, the odd note, how he feels if someone was following him on his walks to and from school, etc. The school children laughed it off as a joke, but my grandfather wasn't so sure. To him, Billy seemed genuinely frightened, a fear that couldn't be faked. That was the last time that my grandfather ever saw him. Billy Gordon belonged to the Knock Knock Man. Soon afterward, rumors began to circulate around the school that someone had seen Billy. While walking his dog, a boy from Billy's class heard some commotion coming from an old farmhouse near the edge of town. The boy took his dog and peeked into one of the basement windows where the noise was coming from. And there he saw Billy, or what was left of him anyways. Billy laid there in the dark and dusty basement, strapped to a table, screaming for his life. while something cut off chunks of his flesh, piece by piece, and devoured them, until there was nothing left to cut. The boy said he never got a good look at what had Billy. It was far too dark. But ever since then, the kids at the school began to recite a rhyme which told the story. If you answer the door and no one is there, you'll rot away in the knock-knock man's lair. He'll eat your tongue and eat your eyes. You won't say a word or see yourself die. I used to think it was just a story. After I came home this morning, I was greeted by my dog, Toggles. I fed him and continued on with my day. That was when I heard it, a knock on my door. I assumed that it was the UPS or FedEx guys, given that I had been expecting a package for some time now. So I answered it without thought. No one was there. I looked around, didn't see anybody or my package. I didn't think anything of it, so I shrugged it off, thinking that maybe I was just hearing things. So I closed the door and went back to Toggles. That was when it came back, knocking harder this time, almost pounding. I knew I wasn't just hearing things since Toggles jumped up and ran to the door, barking at whatever was on the other side. The knocking stopped. I stepped up to my door and looked through the people. Not a soul. The trees across the street remained motionless as well. I slowly turned around and told Toggles to be quiet and come with me upstairs. He stared back at me as his drooling tongue bounced from one side of his mouth to the other and followed closely behind me. Hoping that it was someone playing a prank on me, maybe some kids playing Ding Dong Ditch or something, having a laugh at my expense, I tried not to think about it too much. Toggles and I got to the base of the stairs when the knocking started back up again. I shouldn't even say knocking. This was pounding. Thunderous pounding, nearly shaking the door in its frame. I lost my temper and ran to the door, throwing it open, nearly ripping the door from its hinges, as I screamed, "What?" at the top of my lungs. But there was no one there. I looked around. No one was walking. No one was running. No chuckles from around the corner. Nothing. That is when I looked down. Laying on my welcome mat was a wrinkled piece of white paper, roughly 2 by 3 inches. I picked it up and examined it. On this piece of paper, written in black ink, was one word: hi. This story begins years ago. Back then, I was a serial killer. They called me the Face Reaper. That was my calling card, slicing off people's faces. Each time, I wore it like a mask when I killed my next victim. Back then, it felt good. I can't remember what drove me to this killing spree, but I do remember what ended it. I was camping out in a quiet town in the panhandle of Oklahoma. Mostly, I started by getting used to life in a town. Nobody survived me, so nobody knew what I looked like. It was easy that way. After that, I followed up with a plan. In this tiny town, I knew everyone when I plotted it out, and most of them lived alone or with a spouse. I immediately knew my first target. His name was Bentley, and he lived alone in a house just next to the southern border of Texas. He would be an easy target. He hardly ever got out, and nobody would miss him. The little I communicated with him, he was disjointedly raving about how terrible the town was, and that he knew what I was. Probably schizophrenic or something. I'd be doing him a favor. That night, my face cutting blade in hand, I snuck into his house and found him sitting on his rocking chair, snoozing. I turned on the lights, and he woke up, startled. He shouted. Then looking around, he saw me. Oh no! I laughed. Sure enough, schizophrenic. That or the knife, but most victims respond by asking why I have the knife. "Hello, old man Bentley," I said, swaggering forward. "Care to peel some potatoes with me?" No, you don't understand. Please have mercy," he cried out in fear. "Don't you worry yourself, old man," I remarked. "It will be painless." "No, you don't understand. I smiled. Poor old man. His face dangled from my face-cutting blade. I had no mask for this kill, simply because faces don't store well, but I certainly had one for the next victim. I decided to try it on. It fit too well. I felt it welding to my face. It burned. I felt my nose melt away. I tried to rip it off, but I felt like I was pulling my face off. I felt my vision blurring and my strength faded, and I began to lose consciousness. I swear, I saw the dead body laughing. Suddenly, I came to in my bed. Was it all a dream? I was unsure, but I decided to continue with my daily routine, starting with the stretches, of course. Crack! I fell over. Did I throw my back out? Then I realized something was wrong. 1, the floor was not my floor. 2, the bed was not my bed. 3, I was an old man. An old man? I stood up and looked in the mirror. No doubt about it. I was Bentley. Bentley? How? I was confused, but I decided to go outside and ask about what day it was. Bentley didn't have a calendar. I had reached for the door, but it seemed like something was repelling me. I pushed hard, but the repelling force wouldn't yield. Suddenly, I lost all control and moved over to Bentley's rocking chair. I then realized my mind was filling up with Bentley's memories. It was all a rush. Eventually, I couldn't handle all the information stored in my brain. It was all a blur. I figured, however, that I could simply sleep off the memories and I could handle it all when I woke up. The lights came on and I awoke, startled. I looked around, only to stare straight into my eyes. My eyes. Oh no, I said, holding my hands up as if to brace for impact. Face Reaper, laughed. "Hello, old man Bentley." He said, lurching forward like a demon. "Care to peel some potatoes with me?" I knew what was coming next, but maybe I could convince him. No, please, have mercy," I cried, but it didn't seem to convince him to stop. I had to tell me, the truth. "Don't you worry yourself, old man, it will be painless," I remarked, blade raised. Oh no, I had to act fast. "No, you don't understand, A white, hot, searing pain burst through me. It was not painless, and I was not yet dead. I felt my vision blurring away as he tried on the mask. I heard me screech in pain as my face welded to mine, and he fell to the floor. Only seconds before fading, I couldn't help but laugh. Then I awoke with a jolt. New bed, new memories, coming in slowly. Everything. I was a new person, and I was going to die again to myself. This cycle has been going on for years. Each day that passes, I lose my face again and again to whoever has taken my place. I figure that every time I wake up, I'm somewhere else, being that old man Bentley for some other face reaper. This body is a frequent Reddit poster. Only now can I tell the story. I don't think anyone can help me. But knowing my story is out there, somewhere, for someone to read is the most I can get.